So hello everyone, and welcome back to our video series, our friend to friend video series. This is episode 3, and today I am talking to a fellow grieving mom and a team member of Sacred Sorrows, and her name is Kendall Heaney. So welcome to our episode, Kendall.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It is great to have you here. You are an amazing, cheerful, wonderful woman, and I just love being able to have the opportunity to chat with you. I met
Oh,
Kendall a couple of years ago. She came to our Sacred Sorrows Mother's Love and Loss retreat at the Jesuit Retreat Center, and she was just a ball of fire and brought such energy to our retreat, and it was so wonderful to have her there. So I'm really glad that we're going to be chatting today.
me too.
Yeah. So one of the things that I learned about Kendall is that she is a San Francisco native, and being a San Francisco native, she has a bias, and it is a particular bias. You see, every year Sacred Sorrows has a annual fundraiser for See's Candy, and Kendall is a diehard See's Candy fan, and I think you told me you are a nut and chew girl, right?
Yes, I don't like the soft centers.
So, tell me, I know how much you love San Francisco. Tell me some of your favorite things about San Francisco and a little bit about your background, and then we're going to introduce more deeply into the story of your loss and where we are right now.
Okay. Well, yes, I was born and raised. I'm second generation San Francisco native. My dad was born and raised in the city. And, I know that San Francisco gets a lot of bad press these days. And, it's a city, it's having its problems like a lot of big cities are, today. But I just, I love this city. I love the diversity. I love the lack of judgment of people that, people, so many people have come here and been able to be themselves from all over the world. I love the fact, number one, physically, it's a beautiful, beautiful city. It has some of the best food in the world. Uh, Wonderful neighborhoods and museums, and just it's great. It's a great walkable city. I'm fortunate to live in a nice neighborhood with good weather. And I just love it. And one of the things I really, really love, my dad he's 89, and I've heard all of his stories 100 times before, but
Yeah.
him growing up in the city, when he did, the old San Francisco stories are just, I I just love it. I don't know, people talk about like New Yorkers, being real New Yorkers. I feel like I'm a real San Franciscan, and I don't take it for granted. I've traveled a lot, and I love everywhere I go. I get something from every place I've been. Appreciate it, but I'm always happy to come back home to San Francisco.
Oh, that is so awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Excuse me. I love that about you. So it is really been a cool journey getting to know more about how you are really ingrained in San Francisco, and it's awesome. I love that. So you have two boys. One son is living, and you lost Sean. He is not here on earth anymore. He's with you, but in heaven. So I know you lost Sean on July 1st, 2021. Yes.
Well,
And that was 3 years ago.
yes.
Yes, yes. So I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Mhm. So Sean was also a San Francisco boy. So I just want you to take maybe a couple minutes, tell us a little bit about Sean and his bright character and the things that you really value and appreciate about when you think of Sean?
You know, I know every mother is biased. We all love our children, but he was such a special kid. I always thought of him as being an old soul in a young body. He he was very sweet. He had a very giving nature. He had he had the same laugh he had from the time he was a baby. And I always describe it as a secret little laugh between friends. It was, it wasn't big and loud. It was just very sweet. He loved to read. He actually ended up being a youth poet laureate for the city of San Francisco when he was about maybe 12 or 13.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
yeah, yeah. And we went down to, I think it was, I don't know if it was a main library, but they had a presentation and he, read his poem and stuff like that. He was very much kind of an introspective kid. Um, Growing up in San Francisco, we had a wonderful small Catholic elementary school, K through 8, about 4 blocks from our house. And that's where my boys went to school. And it was really more like a small family. The community of people at that school was very diverse. And it really, when Sean passed, he made good friends there. And when he passed, the church was packed with, teachers, the principal, all of the students that he went to school with, in addition to families that had kids in other grades. So I knew he was well loved, but when I saw that, I was sort of like, it made my heart swell how what people thought of him, that he touched so many people with his kindness. He was just, and he was funny and a very sort of his humor kind of ran dry. He loved watching The Office, and when he got a little older, South Park, totally
Yeah.
inappropriate. But I'd hear that little laugh on the couch when I was making dinner. Um, he was just he was a good kid, and he tried really hard. School did not come easy to him like his brother, and he wasn't a super athletic kid, although he was on all the um, school team, the school teams throughout grammar school. I always said, he couldn't hit a baseball to save his life, but boy, did he root on his teammates. Um, he was just, he was just a kind, sweet kid. Not without, all kids have their little
Yeah.
things,
Yes. Yes.
parents and kids, they get into it sometimes. Sometimes he would drive me up a tree. But
Yeah.
he just, yeah, he was just a ray of sunshine, the love of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for so much for sharing that. And none of that surprises me. First of all, I know his mom. I I wish I would have known you before he passed, but I never would have known you if he hadn't have passed, because
Right.
that's why we're sitting here. Um, for both of our sakes, I wish we weren't sitting here, right? But here we are. But I'm not surprised because, they say the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, right? And you are so much that. Like when you say that he was a youth poet laureate for San Francisco, I'm like, well, I'm not surprised because you are such a communicator. You have written an awesome blog article for Sacred Sorrows. I definitely would love for you to write more. I will link to your blog article in this, like in the emails that I send out about this video. And you're also just such an amazing communicator. So you're also giving, kind, funny, all of the things that you just said about Sean, so that doesn't surprise me. I really relate to what you say about, especially when you said, South Park and how you would listen to him laugh while you were making dinner. And, Chad also, my son Chad also liked to laugh like a hyena over South Park, and it would drive me up a tree also. But then to think about those moments in life that we didn't think were very special, or we didn't realize how special they were during the time, like the moments when we hear our kids laughing in the background while we're making dinner, just like the day to day takes on such a poignant meaning when we have lost our children. And I love those type of memories. I really like to remember Chad coming over after he had moved out of the house. He and his brother would come over on Sundays for, mid-afternoon meal that I would prepare, and he would fall asleep on the sofa and take a nap. And sometimes, we would all take a nap. And I remember just thinking how peaceful I felt when, even though my kids were, grown up at that point, we were all napping on a Sunday afternoon. And it was such a beautiful thing. And, I didn't really realize how much it would mean to me until, how it became so meaningful after he doesn't come over to take a nap anymore, and he never will. So yeah, those special memories are really something to hold on to, and it sounds like you're doing that, holding on, in what you just said about dinner. I'm sure you have
Yeah.
many more memories like that.
Yes.
So I know that as part of your story, you and your family moved out of San Francisco for a lot of good reasons, for the education of the boys. And then life got kind of rough. And then fast forward to, Sean dying. And then 3 years ago, you had to face what no one can imagine, and no one could, ever want to go through. And now here you are. You've lived through 3 years, like, and I'm sure on July 2nd, 2022, you didn't think you would be able to live.
Right.
And so, like, Kendall, how did you get through that? Um, those, the aftermath of the loss of Sean, and what can you share about that beginning journey? And you don't have to share it all in, that's a big piece, right? But I mean,
Yes. Right.
we can talk a little about the beginning, and then we can move into other things that happened in our conversation. I don't want you to have to like break that apart,
Right.
in
Right.
one monologue. But what rises to your heart when I ask that? I know I'm taking you back to the beginning, which is triggering and traumatic and emotional, so we don't have to stay there very long.
Okay. Well, you know, our situation, I don't want to say it was unique because I'm sure other people have been through this, but at the time that Sean had passed, his father and I were separated, and I was living in San Francisco and they were in the East Bay. The boys were living with their dad. And so, when I got the call and I went up there, and I ended up staying there with my husband and my other son, Patrick, for about a month afterwards. You know, it's interesting. I never, in this whole journey, even in the immediate aftermath, I never had that feeling of being angry with God that some people talk about. But I did question why. And partly I knew some of those answers because that move our intention when we moved out of the city was to move somewhere that had good high schools. And my sister lived in the area, my best friend lived in the area, and the entire family was on board with the move. But when Sean started high school up there, he just never really found his people, or I should say, the people that he probably should have gravitated to, the maybe the quieter kids, the kids that are into music and art and that sort of stuff. He wasn't an athlete. It was a huge high school. And he sort of fell into a crowd of kids that were not really healthy for him. We had some problems with him. He had gone to live with my sister for a while because it was getting very difficult at home. And that was really good for him. They were super close. She took great care, she lived 10 minutes from us. She took great care of him. He got a job while he was living with her and stuff. And then eventually, after about 6 or 9 months, he came back home. In the immediate aftermath, gosh, you replay stuff in your head, coulda, shoulda, woulda, and thinking like, had we not separated, would this have happened? Had I got him, he was, what is the saying I'm thinking of? He was taking substances to make him feel himself, but he was self-medicating. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
He had suffered from some depression. We had taken him to several doctors, those sorts of things. Sometimes he would take his medication, sometimes he wouldn't take his medication. So it was a very kind of uncertain time. And I think, if I'm being totally honest, in my heart of heart, there was a part of me that thought this might be what happens to him. I kind of felt that before he passed. And, I carry guilt around that, but at the same time, when I look back, I'm not sure I could have done anything different that would have changed the outcome, I don't know if getting him into some sort of a treatment program would have worked. We were still living in that area. It would have required, moving out of that area. And when somebody is dealing with something like depression and substance abuse, they also have to want to be committed to getting better. And I think he had kind of gone down the rabbit hole, and he was suffering mentally. He was a very, very sensitive kid, and he felt the world so deeply. Like, I remember, when he was in high school, he wanted me to help him make sandwiches and hand them out to the homeless. And he would get in deep conversations with both his dad and I about, you know, where we were living. There was a set of train tracks, and it really was the case of, like, on the other side of the tracks, it was not so great. And so we would get into these debates about, you have to be careful when you go out, because you might see people that their intentions might not be the best, or they might be under the influence of stuff, whatever. Oh, I can't believe it, Mom, that how can you say that? That's so mean. They're just trying to find their way, and blah, blah, blah. And as a mother, I understand that he was right, but I also want to protect my son.
Yeah.
So I don't know that the outcome would have been different for
Mm.
him. And that part makes me incredibly sad.
Well, I'm going to stop you right there for just 1 second, because I really value your honesty there and your vulnerability and in every level. And it's what, gosh, it's one of the blessings of this work that we do in Sacred Sorrows is that the moms that like you, me, come together. What we've been through makes us be able to be deeply honest and compassionate with each other, and real about our losses because we can say, at first we might think it had something to do with us. And or if I would have done this differently, or if I would have done that differently, then maybe things would be different. And I just want to give hope to anyone that's watching right now that if you think that, stop thinking that. Like, it's not going to serve you in any way to what if, what you could have done or would have done. Things just happen. And, nothing was conspiring against us or you in the loss of your child. Just, people worry sometimes, how could God do this? And I always say, God didn't take our children, God received our children. Um,
I
so I
love
just
that.
want to, point that out that I really appreciate your honesty around that. Also appreciate your honesty about like you had wondered, and thought maybe you could lose him. And I remember a few years before Chad died, and he had struggled also with substance abuse issues. And he would be sober for a couple years and then sober for a couple years. And, that couple year mark, he didn't, it seemed like he couldn't get past that a few different times. Um, but I remember at my wit's end at one point having the thought, okay, if Chad dies, like, what am I going to wear to the funeral? Like, I was literally thinking, is there a black dress in my closet? Um, so I think it's interesting. We're not the only two people that thought of that about our children. And I think, um, maybe that was beneficial. I know a lot of people who weren't grieving parents couldn't even understand that wording, but
Right.
I think you can. Like maybe it was beneficial to have that thought already. And that was years before he died. Like, oh, I might be dealing with this, or that little hint that came in. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, and I think I've only shared this with one other person. Um, and I think it is something that unless you have been in our, shoes, you wouldn't understand. My greatest fear when he was still with us was that he would end up on the street. Sometimes like you'd be driving and you'd see a couple of young people sitting down on the ground outside a building, doing drugs or whatever, or because in San Francisco, that we have a problem with that, between drugs and homelessness and stuff like that. You drive in certain parts of the city and you'll see somebody bent over, like just gone,
Yeah.
and that was actually my greatest fear, was that he would end up on the street and not knowing how he is doing, and is he healthy, and mentally and physically. That scared me the most. um it's a weird thing to say, like, somebody might say, well, wouldn't you rather have him back and him be like that than taken from you? And I don't know, actually. I feel like in the immediate aftermath, all I wanted was to know that he was at peace, that he was happy, that um that he wasn't hurting anymore, mentally or physically. Um, and I knew he was safe. And it's an awful thing to admit, but I felt that. Maybe not immediately, but I came to feel that way. Like, I mean, I miss him every day. Every morning I get up, I come in and I say good morning to him. I have a little kind of altar here for him, and I say good morning and I say good night. Or if I'm going away on a trip, I'm like, I'll be back in 3 days, that sort of thing. Um, oh, I give I give everything to have him back with me for a day. But I also feel in my heart that he's okay, you know. Um, he's at peace, and that gives me peace. And if I can interject something, sort of jumping ahead,
Sure,
when I
sure.
went when I went to the first retreat of Sacred Sorrows in November, so that would have been in November 2022, I believe.
Your
I
first,
had
talking about your first retreat or the
my
returning
first
mom?
retreat.
So actually that was spring, and then you went to the returning moms in November. So you were on
Okay,
retreat, I think in either in April, I think, March or April.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. That's probably
Isn't it
right.
so easy how like
Yeah,
we get so messed up with time?
yeah,
Yeah,
yes. But
big
I
time.
had an experience there that just kind of knocked my socks off. And um I went to bed one night. I don't know what night of the retreat it was. And there where the retreat center is, when you turn off the lights, the room is just like black. And I shut my eyes and I could see Sean's face, and he had this little smile, just like his laugh. It was just a little smile. And he just said, "I'm okay, Mom. I'm okay." And I, I was like, oh, and it was so real. And it was so, it's one of those things, unless you've experienced it, it's a hard thing to explain and a hard thing for people to understand. But I knew in that moment he was okay. He was where he needed to be. And that's why I say I've never had um anger at God. I mean, I am a woman of faith. And I think that in the aftermath of his passing, my faith really has grown stronger. It doesn't mean that,
We're gonna move into that for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there are times when I have a good sob, um, or like about a year after he passed, my girlfriend, her daughter got married, and I went to the wedding in Tahoe. And I remember sitting at the table with all these people and thinking, I'll never see him walk down the aisle. Or if his brother gets married, he'll not, he won't be at the wedding. Or, those things. Those are the things now that come up for me, is the life that I thought he would have had, or even the life that I would have had, like maybe be a grandmother to his children or whatever. But that's my own work that I need to do. So yeah, I that was kind of a roundabout way in answering your question.
No, no, no. I mean, that's where we're going in this conversation. So it was perfect. It, you know, you shared a little about what it was like in the beginning, and then moving into that moment on retreat of knowing that he was fine. I relate and understand, and I talk to a lot of grieving moms about this thing that you brought up about knowing that our children are fine, and I wonder, is it the human condition that once we lose a child, we can then say, okay, but they're not on the street, or they're not where we don't know where they are. There's not this uncertainty. And I think that we all go there. And I think it's natural, is that I often think, okay, and this is just being honest. It's like, Chad, check. Chad's good. Did I want for him to not get married, to not have a full life, to not have children, to not all have all this whole thing that we have these kids and then we think that that's what they're going to do, their life, right? Did I want all that for him to stop? No. But was my goal in having this child? I mean, isn't the goal of being born to get to heaven? Isn't the goal to get to eternal life? And then along the way, we're supposed to love God and serve others and, like, do what we can to contribute to the betterment of people that need to get, people that have needs, right? So I think, okay, well, Chad's good. Like, I did my job, even though I didn't have anything
Right,
to do with his death, but, like, I, I'm not worrying the way that we worry, that we worry about our other children that are living, right? So
right,
it's so complicated, because I know that journey of uncertainty, and our children on streets, and our children maybe making decisions that we wish they wouldn't be making, or problems, or all of the future divorces, like all the problems that life holds, um is its own separate kind of cross of motherhood.
right,
And it just, the more that I go through this journey, Kendall, of life, right? And the older that I get, I guess this is how it goes with everyone, the more suffering that I encounter in my life, and then in future, or excuse me, in people that I know that are walking through suffering. And it's just like, I come to terms with, it's suffering. It's it's all so much about suffering, and what we do with that suffering, and how we can make that suffering become meaningful, and the work of that, and how it's a warrior's path, and it's not for the faint of heart. And how many people, especially grieving moms, right, fall by the wayside, and, like, escaping into alcohol, or escaping into, just whatever to escape into, because the pain is so great. But, really leaning into the pain, um, which is what we've done. And that will bring forth and having the faith that you mentioned will bring forth, transformation and meaning. So, yes, let's talk about, that transformation and leaning into our faith. I mean, I know, like you said, you're a woman of God. Um, so you find sacred sorrows and you come on a retreat, and, like, what everything kind of, I'm not going to say sacred sorrows is the be all and end all, but a lot of things changed for you. There was, like, some kind of pivot point, had to do with faith, I would imagine. So if you want to just tell us a little, like, okay, this is your next phase of the journey, right? Like, what has that done? Where are
right.
you going with it? I know I really talked a lot right now. Sorry
No,
about
no, I love it. I
that.
love it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so a good friend of mine had heard of Sacred Sorrows in her church. I think she had seen a flyer, something like that.
Mhm.
And she passed it along to me, and I think there was an upcoming retreat, and I was not ready for it. And then when I signed up for the one after that, I believe. Um, I'm not going to lie, I was really nervous about it because I didn't know what to expect. And you carry all this stuff inside of you as a mother, a parent that has lost a child. And you have a few people that you can share that with, but even people that are good friends or family members, there's a lot you feel that you can't really share. It's I don't know how to explain that. Like I have found in the aftermath when I really break down, it's times when I am like in the shower, driving my car. Very rarely have I been on the phone with a friend and broken down. I don't know if that's self-preservation. I don't know why that happens, but there is something about the connection with other women that have lost a child, that there is just this, we know, we understand, we don't have to explain and I think one of the things that is so beautiful about Sacred Sorrows, and you are so good about what you do, the way you run these retreats, is like that first night the focus wasn't really on our children. The focus was on us as mothers and how we deal with the loss of our children, right? And so I just felt from the moment I pulled up and got out of my car, there was such a the whole weekend I felt like I was just embraced with love and like in a big hug. And I was going to be cared for and taken care of this weekend by other mothers that had gone before me that had lost children. And now we're kind of paying it forward and helping new moms that have lost children. It, I say this to people. I've been in recovery for a little over 6 years, and I say, AA saved my life. It was life changing. The circumstances I won't go into it. I kind of hit rock bottom and I was kind of forced, but the best thing that ever happened to me. Um, and I will say the same with Sacred Sorrows. I think had I not found it, I don't really know where I would be. And I know everybody kind of has to find their
Mhm.
place that works for them.
Yeah.
Um, I had looked at other grief kind of groups or support groups or, Zoom calls, at that time. But there was nothing like Sacred Sorrows that sort of, and I think maybe because it is faith-based, and at the end of the day, when you lose a child,
Hmm.
that faith becomes so, so important to know there's something beyond the here and the now. And and then to have that feeling that your child is there and your child is safe and they are happy. And that's what Sacred Sorrows gave me. And I'm
Yeah.
eternally great. My life was saved a second time, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah, I do. And thank you for saying that. And, I just, I am so honored to have gotten the heavenly call to do this work, although I'd rather not be doing it. But you know, I just often think, okay, there is no way that this ministry, this nonprofit, this work could not it could not be done without being grounded in God. Like no matter how people believe in God, like you can't take a group of moms and who have lost children and like not have the conversation of where are they. Like you can't have like there's no way you can't talk about heaven when you're with moms who are still worrying about their children and always will be. So I know that there are a lot of organizations to help people with grief. I just can't wrap my head around the ones that don't go further than the psychological piece. And I know that, like you said, there's help for everybody. But I think for moms in particular, psychological pieces, which we offer those at Sacred Sorrows, but like the psychological pieces that are so important, I just think they can only go so far because,
Yeah.
you and I are both sharing about, we just have to know that our kids are okay. That's part of our, wiring as mothers. Um,
Yes.
and we know that. We know that. And I know that Chad and Sean know each other. And I mean, my gosh, like there's so much comfort in that. Um, so now moving forward here, you've been on retreat and then you came on a returning moms retreat. Like the journey continues, right? Like you said, like Sacred Sorrow saved you, but then this tribe is so important. And there's this gathering, there's this group of women who have been on retreats and now they have a retreat every November, and there are circles that gather together, and there's more to the journey. So like how has your faith, like yes, your faith grew, but now it's continuing to grow in unique ways. So, like,
Yeah.
like, if you could tell a little bit about now, it's not only about the loss of Sean anymore in this world of faith work and grief work. Like, I guess the word is integration. How things are integrating, I guess, a little. If you could share a little bit about that.
Well, part of it probably, I've said, obviously, I wish I had never lost Sean. But I will say this, I have had blessings in my life that I would not have had this not happen, had Sean not passed. And I'd rather have Sean back than any of those, things that have come to pass. But like, for instance, um, the gift of him coming to me when I was at the retreat. I also had an instance where, and I don't remember if I had shared this with you, but I was up visiting my other son, and on the way home, I stopped into a shop, a Dollar Tree or Dollar General or whatever. I wanted to get some crafting stuff. And it was newly opened. I had never been in this one before. And I walked in, and I literally walked in with my cart, and there was an older woman like that was getting her cart, not too far from me. Literally within about 5 seconds of me walking in, she looked at me and she said, "Girl," she said, "you have an angel in heaven looking down on you."
Oh
And
my God.
I froze, and my eyes welled up, with tears. And I said, "Oh my goodness." And it was not that long. I'm not, it happened, I think, in the first year. And so I stopped and I went over to her and I said, "Oh, you won't believe this, but like I lost my son last year." And she said, "Oh, I lost a son too, many years prior." And so we just stood there and chatted for about 10 minutes. I pulled out my phone, we took a picture together. And I, you talk about the integration. It's things like that I feel are, I don't think it's wishful thinking on my part. I feel they are signs being sent to me. Don't know if it's coming from God, from Sean, both, but it's just saying it's a confirmation that he's okay. Like, "Hey mom, I'm okay. I'm gonna send you this lady today, and she's gonna make your heart really happy." Things like that have happened, I think that, as you've been so kind to invite me into sort of the world of Sacred Sorrows to, you know, do a bit of work here and there, find my place. And I've always felt like that is a way to honor my son. So not, I'm not just going to a retreat and receiving, receiving, and receiving. I'm doing something that is a way to give back to honor him. I've tried the last couple years, I've tried to do something on his birthday or around his birthday and on the anniversary of his passing that has some meaning and as a way of kind of paying it forward. One year I donated blood. This past year I did the fundraiser on my Facebook page to raise some money for Sacred Sorrows. And I feel like I feel like all that was sort of meant to be. Like I'm on this path, this horrible, horrible, the worst thing that could happen happened in my life. And I'm trying to live my life in a way that makes the best out of a very bad situation, and to pay it forward and to give back in honor of him, in memory of him, and to keep his memory alive, and also to show my other son that we can survive this, that we can, he has a whole nother set of issues that he's going to have to deal with, but that his mom, who has been in recovery for 6 years, and his mom who filed for divorce from his father, and his mom who lost her oldest son, that life continues with or without us. And I would like it to continue with me in it, doing something of value that Sean would be really happy that I'm doing. So that's kind of where my trying to integrate my day-to-day life with my faith, sort of putting my faith into action, if that makes sense.
That was incredibly beautiful, and really profound. And I feel like it is an amazing place for us to end our conversation today, because you've just tied that all up in a package that is really more profound probably than you knew when you were saying it. I mean, it was like, wow, Kendall, like we're done
Oh
with this
goodness.
talk today. Wow.
You'll need another nap after this one, right?
No, no, this is like fabulous. We'll need to have another conversation again in the future. There are so many things that I would love to talk about the fact that life doesn't end. I love what you said about this mother that you are now. Um, I'm discovering more and more that yes, the worst thing happened to us in our lives, but it doesn't mean the worst things are over. Like now there still rough things happen. So that's like the call, right? That's how we stay strong. But wow, thank you for everything that you just said. Thank you for your time today, Kendall. Thanks for opening your heart and for being really vulnerable. I know that it blessed me talking to you today, and that this conversation will bless other women. So if you're listening or watching, please, and you are a grieving mom, please consider the possibility of coming on a retreat. It might feel far-fetched to you. It might feel like too big of a thing, or that you simply can't even imagine flying somewhere to go on a retreat. But you know what? People do it. They fly places, they get on airplanes to go to retreats. They figure out a way to get there. So don't let anything like stop you from coming. And if you need assistance financially, there are ways that we can help with that. Kendall has been doing a lot of things trying to fundraise for Sacred Sorrows, and that fundraising is going toward helping people get to retreats. So reach out if you need assistance or ways to come on our retreat. So thanks, Kendall, and God bless you and me and us, and let's just keep fighting the good fight.
And thank you, Rita, for founding Sacred Sorrows.
I know.
The amount of women that you've helped is wonderful, just
Yeah.
wonderful. I love you so much.
I love you too. And all the glory to God, right?
Yeah.
All right. Saying bye now.
Bye-bye.